So we are starting 8.1, which is sample size and population. Our learning goal is to understand how to use random samples to make conclusions about populations. So first we need to understand a few terms. So a population is an entire group of people or objects. A sample is a part of a population. You can use a sample to make an inference or conclusion about a population. So this chart better explains it. So a population would be the entire group as a whole. A select sample is when we take a few people from that population and we collect some data on them or from them. Then we take that data and we interpret it, and then we inference that and we conclude that it must be true for the population. So in example 1, we are going to take a look at an example, and we need to decide if this is a population or if it's a sample. It's really important that we know how to determine the difference between both of them. So in the first one, we have the students in Lakeview Middle School. So because we are talking about Lakeview Middle School as a whole, this would be the population. The students in Miss Thetford's P1, or if you are in Miss Mutt's, then we can just say Miss Mutt's P1. So since we're talking about just a small group, this would be a sample. So these students in either one of our P1s are only a small portion of the overall students at Lakeview. So this would be a sample. This would be a better sample if we are trying to make conclusions of 7th graders, because then we are looking at a group of 7th graders. But because it's not the entire set of students at Lakeview, this is just a sample. So a sample is just like a small group, while a population is the entire group as a whole. So now I want you to try, and then, so pause the video, and then you can check your answers with mine. So for each problem, we are going to determine which is the population by highlighting that, and then we're going to underline the sample. So in number 1, we have the grizzly bears with GPS in a park, or the grizzly bears in a park. So the population would be all of the grizzly bears in the park. The sample would be the ones that have those GPS locators on them, so that allows for people to track them. And so they don't have GPSs on every single grizzly bear in the park, so that's just a small sample of the overall grizzly bear population in that park. For number 2, we have 150 quarters, or we have all the quarters in circulation, so all the quarters that are out there. So for this example, all of the quarters in circulation would be our population, and then our sample would be just looking at 150 of them. And for number 3, we have all fiction books in the library, or we have 10 fiction books in the library. So for this one, all of the fiction books in the library would be our population, and then we have 10 fiction books in the library, so we're only looking at 10 of them, so that's a small sample. So now let's take a look at random samples. So when a sample is random, that means that each member of the population has an equal chance to be selected. So you want you want to know the favorite activity of students at Lakeview. So our population would be Lakeview. Circle the samples that would be considered random. So we have members of the school band, students in your math class, students who enter your school in the morning, or we have school newspaper readers. So we want to choose the ones that are considered random. So they were chosen at random. So it's actually not going to be A, because we can infer that the majority of the students that are in band would have band as one of their favorite activities. So because they all have that one activity in common, it's not a good representation of all of the students at Lakeview, because not everybody at Lakeview is in band and not everybody at Lakeview plays an instrument. Students in your math class would be random because they don't get to pick what math class they're in. They're randomly assigned to either block 1, 2, or 3. And so since they're randomly assigned to that classroom, there's going to be a very broad group of students, which would be a very diverse set of different activities that students might like at Lakeview. For C, students who entered your school in the morning, that would also be random because you don't enter the school in the same order every single day. You know, one day you could be a car rider, one day your bus might be late. So there's not a specific order to how you enter the school. So you could have some 6th graders come in, you could get some 7th graders, you could get some 8th graders. And so you have a wide variety of students. So therefore, again, you have a wide variety and a diverse set of favorite activities. Students who read the newspaper is not a random one because, again, they all have that thing in common. They all have that one activity that they do in common. And so it's not random. They all have a similar thing already, and you already know a similarity about them before you take any information from them. So because they all do something already that you know that they all like, it's not random.